Welcome to the Future of Payroll and Workforce Management Insights by HR.com, your go-to resource for insights into payroll and workforce management. From navigating compliance and technology trends to exploring the latest in global payroll solutions, we're here to keep you ahead of the curve. Join us as we dive into the forces reshaping payroll and share practical strategies to optimize your workforce management. Let's get started. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this latest episode of Future of Payroll and Workforce Management, a podcast here at HR.com, where I am executive community leader of Future of Payroll, and I do a bunch of other things. I can't even remember everything that I do, and I don't know what that means. But anyway, enough about me. This is about my guest today, who is Alex Warren, Vice President of Worldwide Partnerships at Pebl, which is formerly Velocity Global. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you so much for having me, Brent. Super excited to chat about employer of record.
Oh yeah, me too. Me too. It's a really interesting area of the market once you scratch beneath the surface. Once you get past sort of the surface layer, it's very, very interesting. And there's a lot going on in this space, and we have a topic today around compliance, and it's not just what it seems on the surface too when it comes to compliance, but and we'll get to that in a moment. But what I love to ask all my guests, and you are no exception, is what is your passion in this space? What got you into the world of work, like services for the world of work specifically? What galvanizes you every day to get back at your desk and keep on keeping on?
Yeah, it's such a great question, especially having been here for nearly a decade and a founding of the industry. It's funny when I started my career abroad, and I knew I wanted to be an international business. I didn't know what it looked like, but I knew that was my path in cross-border work. And when I came across Pebl nearly a decade ago, um, the fact that we solve for truly improving lives everywhere by allowing businesses to operate and expand anywhere just resonated so deeply. And foundationally, as a human, I just believe the best talent in the globe should not be restricted because of the location that they were born, and they have the right to access the best companies and the most innovative companies in the world, and vice versa. And so it's so funny. I get posed the question a lot, no one stays at a company for almost 10 years. What do you do? And it does, it keeps me coming back every day because just fundamentally I believe that. And so it certainly, our rebrand has just reinvigorated that position and that message for me. And the solution is so dynamic, right? And I know we're going to chat about compliance and credibility today, and it's this like niche alternative that many thought was non-compliant, and the business application is immense.
Yeah, yeah. I love what you have to say about the EOR space here because, it really is. You're giving people opportunities. You're expanding the sort of the footprint of who can actually work for some of the best companies in the world and this sort of stuff. And so I kind of share your passion in that regard. And I think it's cool you've been at Pebl for 10 years. I mean, that's a breath of fresh air in a world of 2 to 3 year stints, which seems to
I
be sort of
know.
the average. Yeah.
I know, it's wild.
Congratulations. So let's talk about compliance. So let me just kind of set the stage here. So the EOR space kind of came to be originally, and this is still a big raison d'etre of EORs, and that is, hey, you need to hire people in a region that's new to you as an organization, as an employer, and it costs too much, and you probably don't have the internal institutional knowledge anyway to do it yourself. You need to do it right away. So you're going to turn to us in EOR, and we'll help you do that. We will take care of all the legalities and do it right so that you're compliant from a regulatory standpoint and
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff, and you get up and running right away. So there's speed, and the big hurdle to that is being compliant. So we take care of that. So that's sort of like a foundational sort of impetus for this market. So precision. I'm talking about precision in compliance. It kind of runs the gamut. I
Yeah.
don't know how many EORs there are out there. Probably, I don't even want to make a guess, but it's
The
probably
market
hundreds of them.
has a lot now.
Yeah, there's a lot. There
From
is
when there
a
was just
lot.
us to now, it's wild. It's
A
wild.
very precise term, a lot. But,
Yeah.
but in any event, there's precision that's needed in compliance, right?
Yeah.
And so there, and that precision or lack thereof kind of runs the gamut, right? But it's not just a legal necessity; it's a strategic advantage. So that's sort of the setup here.
Yeah.
Uh, Let me ask you, like, sort of my first question for you around that. How is the regulatory landscape around EOR changing globally? And why does compliance play such a critical role in this evolution?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I mentioned as the founder of the industry, when we started out, there was no regulatory framework. um, so, it's interesting when you start, right, where governments effectively look at you and look at what you're doing, and they're like, well, we don't have anything drafted, and so we're just gonna fit you into what we kind of have that seems or looks similar. So, it's interesting because the industry really started, and when we founded it, in really kind of consulting frameworks or temporary employment frameworks. It has since really evolved in a really meaningful way. And, where Pebble is uniquely positioned is we believe that governments and the regulators are actually we have a mutualistic relationship with them and driver with them. We're actually a founding member of the GEIC, which is a consortium of employer of records working with local governments to build appropriate infrastructure. And this is why we're seen as really a strategic partner to the companies that we support, because we don't shy away from the fact that it's a new industry that should be regulated to make sure that it is ethical and operating to the utmost degree of the law. And why does that matter? Well, you hit the nail on the head, Brent, is it's an alternative to corporate infrastructure. It's not just an employment vehicle. And so if we are bearing the burden of corporate infrastructure, that means that we are taking on the brand reputation of these organizations, and they are leveraging our entity ecosystem and the legal components of that, the payroll components of that, the employment law and rights and the efficacy of that to expand their companies globally, right? And to expand their brand and to, most importantly, attract talent. And so it's something that we really take very seriously. And as you mentioned how is it a competitive differentiator? Because everyone says that they're compliant.
Yeah.
Compliance 90% of the way is a problem. Right. And here's an example that I'll give you. In Germany, which was one of the first countries to actually start regulating the employer of record space, they passed back in, I believe it was 2017, 2018, the AUG. It's a 13-letter German word, which I will not attempt to pronounce. Um, and the intent of this was they actually said, okay, we're going to actually fit this within a temporary labor leasing structure because we still want organizations that are testing the German market to actually set up an entity infrastructure once that time frame has reached, right? Because at the end of the day, all of this is about tax dollars. It's how do we make sure that, companies can move quickly into market, that employees are taken care of, employment tax is taken care of, and that governments actually still receive the foreign direct investment that they want. Well, in Germany, this is an 18-month regulation maximum, at which point organizations need to set up an entity, the employment needs to end, there can be a 3-month break. We have competitors in the space that say that you can operate in Germany as a consultancy. And to get around this regulation, and that it actually, not only is it illegal and not accurate, it actually puts that company at risk in market. And so when we think about, like, you can get 90% of the way with compliance and you can say you're compliant, that extra 5 to 10% really matters when you think about your employees, your brand reputation and market, how regulators actually are going to perceive your organization if and when you actually set up in that market. And, we're super proud of the fact that we have successfully passed year-over-year audits with the German authorities of our license and actually been granted an indefinite operating license in Germany because of our compliance, because we work with the regulators and we really uphold the intent and the spirit of the law, and we partner with organizations to make sure that we are doing the best thing possible for their company and their growth strategy.
Just to put a fine point on that, if you're looking to set up a shop in Germany, look at Pebble. Anyway,
No, thank you.
how does it
Thank
even
you.
I just have kind of a question off to the side here. How does it even work to be a consultancy? Like, do you even need an EOR to act as a consultancy in Germany to somehow skirt? Like, how does that even work?
Yeah, so there are different operating models. When you look at and it's really interesting because contractors or 1099s, as we would refer them into the US, that are project based or fixed term. The definition of these shall we say worker vehicles are they are distinct across the globe, but they all follow kind of a specific framework, which is, does the individual, contract with multiple organizations? Are they in control of their work, or is the organization in control of their work? Are they using their own technology? And so when you look at kind of a consultancy model where, and again, in some jurisdictions, we operate under that model where we're engaging individuals to provide services for a foreign entity. And when you look at employment populations, what we see is pre-COVID, it was still reviewed, where the individual was responsible for their own taxes, but it wasn't I would say, a large scale employment vehicle as much as what
Yeah.
happened during COVID. And when
Mm.
remote work hit and employees moved all over the globe or all over the US, where organizations didn't have operating entities or a legal way to pay these individuals, governments very quick became abreast of, hey, we're missing out on tax dollars.
Yeah.
And you actually see a shift that occurred in the early 2020s, where governments started actually enforcing compliance around contractor classification and holding organizations, not the individual contractors, but the organizations, to account
Mhm.
around classification. And this goes back to who's paying employment taxes, is the government receiving their remittances? And in addition, are the employees actually being protected, and are they receiving their entitled rights? And so you do see a spike coming out of COVID where, governments became very savvy of, hey, we've got some misclassification issues. We have organizations or individuals kind of skirting, the worker frameworks that were intended to operate.
Well, there was a critical mass
Mhm.
of remote workers, and that, part and parcel of that was, widely distributed global teams and folks working
Absolutely.
remotely for, say, a Finnish company in India or whatever. I'm just picking
Exactly.
to, disparate nations, if you will, right? And that just kind of heightened awareness. This might be a good segue to another question I have, and I know that Pebble positions itself as a trusted strategic partner rather than just a service provider in the EOR space. And what does that look like in practice?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. First and foremost, this year for us is really a year of transformation. We have continued to invest very intentionally within our technology and within our product to really explore and strengthen that strategic partnership for our customers, because our customers don't operate in our system and our technology as their home HCM or HRIS. They use us as a strategic lever for growth, new market entry, contractor conversion, pre-IPO readiness, acquisitions, or also times of decline where they may be breaking down their entity infrastructure, but they want to retain the critical employee populations, or they're actually going through a divestiture. Why this matters is that we are fundamentally building a consumer grade experience that supports the corporate journey over every stage and every cycle in all employment types. So whether it's contractors where they're appropriately classified, fixed term project based individuals, circumstances of secondment, or long-term indefinite, critical talent in smaller markets where an entity is not a necessity, we want to ensure that our technology is that consumer grade experience, and that access to our experts via our AI assistant, Alfie, and via our platform is incorporated in a really seamless way. Well, that all sounds really great, right? And technology is phenomenal. But what is the back end engine of that? Well,
Yeah.
Pebble is unique, and why we see ourselves as a strategic advisor is we have over 250 years of in-house employment counsel experience.
Wow.
In addition, we have over 100 HR professionals, payroll professionals, in-house benefits, and immigration operating in over 43 languages natively that are supporting and filling our compliance vault, which now, through our AI and through our investment in innovation, our customers and supported employees have access to 24/7 around the clock, but also the ability to have that human experience in the moments that matter at a click of a button. And pulling those things together, this is why we're the top rated in compliance on G2 compared to our competitors. This
Yeah.
is why, we hold, and Pebble's incredibly proud, we hold the most employer of record licensure across the globe. And
Yeah.
it's that brand recognition to earn the right of, if we're going to be that ecosystem, if we're going to be that entity infrastructure for the top enterprise customers, for mid-market customers looking to expand, all the way down to our seed and Series A who are just getting started with that first step, we have to have that expertise, and it has to be evangelized for our customers to be able to consume it.
Yeah, yeah, and I remember we were talking in the green room, several weeks back, and we have a green room here, even though we're not a late night talk show,
Mm,
here on the podcast, but some of that sort of strategic almost strategic advisory, right? Where you're
mhm.
helping an organization over, longitudinally over a long period of time, in
Mhm,
their global expansion and retraction, the ebb and
mhm.
flow journey that they have. So it's not just about being there in a for instance for some new client that needs to
Right.
go into, let's say, Germany again, right? And that's it. It's just a one and
Mhm.
done. This is these are long-term relationships that you have with your clients where you're helping them figure out how to sort of close up shop in a certain region when they
Yeah.
need to do that and maybe leave it somehow as easy as possible to go back there if they need to later. All sorts of permutations of that, and I just wanted to make sure that that we touched on that too, because I think that's a big piece of the puzzle that a lot of people don't think about. People who are familiar with EORs don't necessarily think of working with EORs in that way.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm so glad you raised it because it's my favorite topic, from
Awesome.
helping to build it out. This really hits on the flexibility and the strategic power of the solution. And you see a lot of our competitors right now actually permeate into other industries. So many are becoming HCMs themselves, or applicant tracking systems, or domestic PEOs. And while that's all great and good, where we really believe is the depth of employer of record matters because it is a vehicle and a strategic growth mechanism for organizations. And we really position ourselves and have become, for our customer base, we're a strategic lever in their HR playbook. And
Mhm.
so I'll give a live example of one of our large data publicly traded companies who we've worked with for 5-6 years. They actually started with us in what I would say is like the sweetheart of the employer of record use case, which was new market expansion. They moved into high income jurisdictions. They tested it. And before they set up a brick and mortar, they really made sure that those strategic markets for their product was appropriate. And as
Uh,
soon as they hit their revenue thresholds, they would set up an entity in those markets
yeah.
regardless of headcount, right? It really, for them, their permanent establishment risk threshold and their tolerance was really about revenue generation and control of person market. Pre-IPO, they really just started kind of simplifying. They had their entity infrastructure. They went through a very successful IPO. And post IPO, what was incredibly fascinating about their journey is they've continued to use us, actually, but they've expanded their use cases. They have leveraged us for strategic acquisitions. They have leveraged us for effectively more cost-efficient talent jurisdictions within their product and R&D, as well as where they were running into talent scarcity in markets in the US. They were able to expand out across both EMEA, APAC, and LATAM. And they've continued to leverage us for new market entry, but into middle income jurisdictions where they're not as concerned from a revenue threshold perspective because they aren't as high producing, but they can keep there because they're still within their PE risk profile. But now their CFO, their treasury, their tax teams aren't bogged down, their legal teams, with managing peripheral market entities and going through annual audits and dealing with the HR constant evolution of regulatory changes. And so they're really able to leverage our entity ecosystem to support their strategic growth. And those are, for us, that is the power of the solution and the power of partnering with an employer of record that really grounds themselves in their brand, not only in a consumer grade AI leading technology, but that actually has the compliance and the legal backend to support it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great example. And it's really, really interesting to see how this is, the like you said, the sort of the sweetheart EOR situation, and how many other sort of possibilities there are. In the little time that we have left, if you could quickly just share with our audience, what are some of the factors looking ahead that will determine, which EORs thrive and which may fall behind as this industry matures, and it is maturing.
Yeah, it's a great question. We love to say it's good to not be in the news. um, boring is better.
Yes,
Boring
it
is better
is.
in this space. So I'd start there, right? Is when you are looking to go to market, it is about who can scale up and who can scale down with me in the appropriate ways. Um, this industry and the technology that we have built is about speed to market. And so it's also looking at, do I have a partner that I can trust to manage my entity ecosystem that I am, kind of saying I don't want to set up, I don't want to regulate it. And in addition, am I able to execute the needs of the business as quickly as possible if it's not my infrastructure? And this is where the autonomy of really that self-serve technology that feeds you the insights you need for you and your team to be an expert at the globe whatever time of day you need to work is critically important. And can you trust that information? And that information is on demand, but you still have that human expert to be able to support you. We're seeing a lot of folks go solely into self-serve. And I will tell you, if you are going through a termination in Brazil or in Italy or in France, this is not a self-serve experience. These are highly litigious markets with very sophisticated employment laws around that are built to protect employees. And you want a legal professional available to have that conversation and to strategize with. And so it's really that blend of does the organization have the reputation, the credentials, the employment licensures under employer of record to operate? And does their technology serve that up to you as an organization in an elegant way so that you can meet your internal KPIs, you can meet your business needs, and have those two things together? And then the last piece I would say is, and honestly, perhaps the most important, we are inherently an extension of the brand of the organizations that do business with us. And talent and your talent's perception of who you're bringing in to employ them is incredibly important. And so is the employer of record that you're partnering with, do they have the brand and the reputation and the integrity that your employees are comfortable and confident being employed through that employer of record and able to access world-class benefits that align with your internal company strategy, that you have scale, that you have local language support, and really, like, how do we meet the employees where they're at? Because they're the most critical. You know, we just ran, Brett, a survey of around 400 to 700 C-suite executives across the U.S. and EMEA. Over 47% know that they are expanding globally within the next 1 to 5 years. And over 47% anticipate that half of their workforce, will be international by 2027.
Wow.
And so that brand reputation and that consumer grade technology experience for both our HR teams, but also those employees, is just absolutely mission critical.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. What I'm hearing is just a robust solution and actually doing what you say when you say you're an EOR, actually having the capacity to do that and to do it in a in a in a in a partnership way and really, really caring about it. I think those are the things I'm hearing. Alex, this has been a fantastic conversation. I wish we could talk about it all day. We are a
Thank you.
podcast, however. So thank you so much for appearing on being my guest. This has been really, really interesting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me and look forward to our continued conversation.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Workforce Management and Payroll Insights by HR.com. We hope today's episode brought you valuable insights and fresh perspectives on the future of payroll and workforce management. Be sure to check out more episodes and explore resources at HR.com/podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep innovating and making a difference in the world of payroll and workforce management.